What up, everybody? From the 4 Season 3 trailers, we know that at some point in Season 3, Tommy will be a lone wolf and at odds with Diamond and CBI. Either though I don't think this storyline will completely unfold until the second half of the season, because at the same time the trailers also have a lot of scenes with Tommy and Diamond together. But even during the first part of the season, when Tommy's still a part of CBI, we'll have to pay attention to what's going on behind the scenes that will ultimately lead to Tommy being a lone wolf. Is it Gennard still plotting behind Tommy's back, undermining him, getting in Diamond's ear and earning his trust? Or will it be Miguel finally going on the offense against Tommy and making chess moves of his own? A combination of both or something else altogether? Keeping in mind that the trailer also showed Stacy Marks saying that there was a street war going on between the Marquez cartel and CBI. But a question we got to answer in regards to this statement is this talking about CBI with Tommy or CBI without Tommy? Because the street war between these two sides could actually start when Tommy splits with CBI and trying to take back the coalition, he could side with the Marquez cartel. Because we know from the trailers that Tommy's going to align with a Latin crew in Season 3, from when it shows Tommy and some guys throwing a man off a balcony, as well as Tommy and some guys shooting up what looked to be a church, and Miguel was with him during this particular shootout. But I do have an update in regards to that clip. Like I said yesterday, I'm currently rewatching Season 2, and yesterday I got to episode 207, and CBI had a coalition meeting in an old abandoned theater called the Avalon Regal Theater, trying to stay a step ahead of the feds because it was the last place they'd expect them to be. And I think that's the same spot Miguel and Tommy are shooting up in the trailers. Either though it looks like it had some remodeling done to it and they're turning it into a church, or it could just be a different section because the inside of the theater was already looking like a church in Season 2. So it looks like the final battle could potentially go down at the Regal Theater. And even if it's not the same spot, Diamond and Gennard are likely using this spot for the same type of thing, either holding a coalition meeting there or using it as a place to lay low if they're thinking Tommy's coming for them. So Tommy and Miguel either ambush a CBI coalition meeting or they ambush this spot when Diamond and Gennard are laying low there, using it as refuge. And now this also explains why Tommy's shooting this spot up with a small army, because if they're shooting up a coalition meeting, they could still be outnumbered. But going back to what I was saying about Tommy aligning with a Latin crew, we know that he aligns with Miguel at least for this shootout, but it could also potentially be a combination of Miguel's crew and the Marquez cartel. In addition to whatever Latin crew that's going to be with Tommy in this shootout, we can also tell that Dmac is with Tommy in this scene as well, as the trailer showed Tommy telling Dmac that he was going to baptize him into this life like Kanan did him in Ghost. It also looks like Dmac was dressed in the same clothes that he had on from the clip in the trailer where he was kissing his gun. And one of the teasers showed a better look into this clip as it showed Marshall and two other guys with Dmac. So this might be Dmac building up his own crew as Tommy starts to teach him the game and baptizes him into the life. Getting me to Tommy's inside man with CBI who could infiltrate CBI so Tommy can stay a step ahead, and that's Dmac's boy, Marshall. At the end of Season 2, Marshall was a low-ranking member of CBI. But with Dmac and Marshall being best friends, we would think when Tommy leaves CBI, Marshall would also leave. But I think Tommy's going to tell Marshall to stay as a member of CBI, now as his inside man. Similar to how Tommy used Shanti as his inside man against Claudia in Season 2. And this is how I think Tommy, Miguel, and everyone else who's with him at the Regal Theater gets the drop that CBI's there, because Marshall gives them the info. And like I said, I think that this clip of Dmac kissing his gun is before he goes to this shootout. So that also means that Marshall's with him during this shootout. But Marshall's also seen in the trailer with CBI multiple times, and that's why I think Tommy's going to be using Marshall as his mole, which at the same time could be a very dangerous game for Marshall to be playing. And either though the clips where Marshall was seen with CBI could have been from before the split, the clip where he's with Diamond, Gennard, Smurf, and Bones is almost guaranteed after the split, because there's a big shootout that takes place during this scene where a bunch of people end up getting killed. We can tell by the background as they're all walking away. But Tommy might have more than one reason to keep Marshall and CBI as his inside man, because that would mean that Marshall would pretty much have to stay away from him and Dmac and act like they're beefing in the streets, similar to how Tommy and Shanti were doing in Season 3. And this would make sure that Marshall and Dmac aren't around each other to do anything stupid, because these two have not proven to be a good influence on each other. Going back to Season 1, when they were first introduced, when they were randomly shooting up JP's bar. Then they came up with the idea to start moving product in Gary, which by itself wasn't a bad idea. But first Marshall got greedy and cut Dmac out of the deal, before Jannard cut Marshall out the deal also. This led to Dmac and Marshall ganging back up and going to Gary themselves to make a deal, and this resulted in Dmac getting shot. In Season 2, Tommy was already trying to keep Dmac and Marshall separated, letting Marshall and CBI while trying to keep Dmac on the sidelines. Either though the two were still together every chance they got, including the next day after Dmac killed Seamus, seen outside of the barbershop talking to a cop. And because of that, Tommy sent Dmac to the boarding school. But when Dmac broke out of the boarding school, the first place he went was Marshall's apartment to lay low. And as Marshall was still in and out handling CBI business, Dmac was just in there waiting on JP to talk to Tommy. But then around this time, Marshall gave Dmac a gun, then told him about the problem Diamond was having wanting to kill Mad Dog, but having the conflict of interest of working with Mad Dog's uncle, King Kilo, and the Coalition. When Dmac went to handle that problem for Diamond himself, only making things worse. So because of their history together of not making the best decisions, is a big reason why I think Tommy will keep Marshall and CBI as his inside man, knowing that he won't be able to keep them apart forever, but at least during this time, he can take Dmac under his wing and teach him the game. So when him and Marshall come back together, they'll both be a little bit more mature. The fact that Marshall always seems to have the scoop about everything going down, like how he knew Diamond wanted Mad Dog dead but couldn't make a move, makes him the perfect inside man for Tommy. Tommy could use information about internal conflicts and things like that going on within CBI and the Coalition to stir things up, before ultimately using Marshall to get the drop on Diamond and Jannard to shoot up that theater. And the fact that Marshall already has a history of turning on Dmac and siding with Jannard makes it more believable, so it could be easy for him to earn their trust. All he'd have to do is talk a little shit about Tommy, call Dmac weak or something like that like he did before. Plus he works for CBI, so he could just tell them he's not about to mess his money up for nobody. And this could go a long way for Marshall moving forward, earning Tommy's trust and showing him he's loyal, and hopefully landing him a role on Legacy. Either though I don't know how that's going to work out for any of the Force cast with Tommy leaving Chicago and all. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.